The first thing I noticed was the unfamiliar sound of laughter drifting from the living room. Not the kind that welcomes you home after a long day. The kind that makes your gut twist before you even open the door. Something told me not to walk in. But I did. Out of habit. Out of denial. Maybe some tiny, foolish part of me still believed everything could be fixed with time, or patience, or pretending I hadn't already seen the signs. I stepped through the doorway of the house I built with my own hands, my own sweat, every ounce of my loyalty and belief in something lasting. 12 years. I had been married to Marla for 12 years. And yet, when she turned to look at me standing there in the entrance, it was as if I were a distant memory, some forgettable man she vaguely recognized. She was holding a wine glass, dressed casually in one of her oversized sweaters, hair pinned up in that messy way she always said was low maintenance. But her eyes? Cold, flat, like I had just interrupted her evening show. And then I saw him, Jason, sitting on my couch, with my dog curled up beside him like they'd known each other for years. My hoodie, yes, my damn hoodie, was stretched over his smug shoulders. His feet were up on the coffee table, the same one Marla once said was too sacred for shoes. Hey, she said casually, walking over with a sway that once made my heart skip. Glad you're here. We were just talking about you. Her voice had that tone, that chirpy, sugary tone she used with customer service agents she thought were beneath her. And then, as if she were offering me an extra towel at a hotel room, she dropped the bomb. Make room for Jason. He's moving in. I froze. That's not a metaphor. My body literally would not move. My hand was still resting on the doorknob. Jason raised his glass, a smirk pulling at the side of his face like he knew exactly how much this would hurt. And Marla? She giggled. He's taking over everything you left behind. Except I hadn't left. I hadn't even processed the betrayal yet. Divorce papers hadn't been filed. Discussions hadn't even been had. In my mind, we were still figuring things out. Yes, we had been distant. Yes, the fights had gotten sharper, colder, more frequent. But I still came home every day. I still asked if she wanted chamomile or peppermint tea before bed. I still wore the wedding band she picked out. Foolishly, I thought that meant something. Apparently, I was the only one still holding on. I took a slow step inside, just one. The house felt unfamiliar. Photographs had been taken down. Our wedding frame? Gone. The little shelf Kira and I built together for Mother's Day? Replaced by some bland IKEA piece. There were 2 suitcases by the staircase, Jason's. Shoes I didn't recognize piled by the door. I looked around, not like a man checking his home, but like a stranger scanning for exits. You're serious? I asked. My voice came out lower than I expected. Controlled. Too controlled. He's moving in? She tilted her head, exasperated. Colin, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You've been emotionally checked out for months. Jason's here now. We're starting fresh. You said you'd be staying with a friend anyway. No, I said slowly. I said I needed space to think. I never said I was leaving for good. I never agreed to any of this. Jason stood up then. Tall, lean, too tan for winter, with that Jim Hone body that always looked like it was about to start a protein commercial. Look, man, he started, I don't want drama. We're just trying to move forward, all right? You can be cool about this or not. It's your call. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. I looked at Marla again. Really looked at her. Her face didn't show guilt or shame or even awkwardness. She looked relieved, like the truth had finally been aired and now she didn't have to pretend anymore. I thought of the years I had spent working overtime to afford our trips. The times I stayed up all night editing presentations while she complained that I wasn't present. The dinners I cooked. The anniversaries I planned. The promises I kept, even when it hurt. And this is how it ended? She walked back to Jason like I hadn't said a word. As if my presence was no more significant than a gust of wind through a half-closed window. They clinked glasses. My scotch. The single malt I was saving for our next milestone. I let out a breath, stepped back outside, and closed the door behind me. Gently, quietly, like I didn't want to disturb their evening. But inside, something shifted. I didn't scream. I didn't slam things or plead or throw punches. I didn't remind her that we had a child, that I had loved her, that I had fought for us long after she stopped showing up. No, I didn't give them that satisfaction. I walked to my car, got in, and sat still for a moment, both hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to the earth. As I turned the ignition, the dashboard lights blinked to life, casting a dull glow across my face. In that moment, the pain twisted into something sharper clarity. They thought I was finished. That they could push me out of my own life and play house like I had never existed. Jason thought he had won. Marla thought she had moved on. But they didn't understand me. I don't erupt. I evolve. And while they toasted to their new beginning, they had no idea mine had just begun. Not with fanfare. Not with vengeance. But with a silent vow. I wouldn't fight them on their turf. I would build something they couldn't touch. And when the time came, I wouldn't have to say a single word. They would know. I came back the next morning, not because I wanted to. I needed my passport, my laptop, a few client files I hadn't backed up yet. Essentials. At least, that's what I told myself. But if I'm being honest, part of me still hoped it had all been a bad dream. Some twisted nightmare I'd wake from, sweaty and shaken, but with a wife who still knew my name and a house that didn't feel like it had been invaded by a stranger in my own skin. The moment I stepped inside, I knew it wasn't a dream. It was worse than I expected. The entryway was cleaner than usual. Too clean. As if someone had gone through with a broom and scrubbed away every fingerprint I'd ever left behind. The art I had picked out? Gone. Replaced with modern abstract garbage that screamed, I have no soul, but I own a Pinterest board. The bookshelf I built from raw walnut planks on a quiet weekend? Replaced by plastic-looking metal shelves filled with Jason's books, mostly self-help, finance hacks, and a muscle anatomy guide the size of a dictionary. No sign of me. Not even in the creases of the rug I once tripped over carrying Marla across the threshold on our first night in this house. I stepped into the office first. It used to be mine, my little sanctuary, with my diplomas on the wall, vintage maps, framed photos from the hiking trips I took with my father before he passed. Now? Empty. Stripped. Not even dust on the shelves. As if I had never worked late nights here, never written a single pitch, never fought through headaches to provide for this family. The framed picture of Marla and Kira that once sat by my monitor? Gone. The ceramic mug Kira made me in kindergarten, the one shaped like a crooked volcano and painted sky blue with #OneDad scrawled on the side in glittery gold? Nowhere in sight. That mug wasn't just a cup. It was history. Memory. Love hardened into shape. I opened the trash bin under the desk, and there it was broken. In pieces. Tossed like it meant nothing. I stood there in silence, a hot pressure crawling up my throat. The kind that tells you tears are coming even when you're too numb to let them fall. But I held it in. I always do. Voices floated in from the kitchen. Laughter again. The sound of a spatula scraping across a pan. I followed the noise like someone walking through a haunted house, already knowing what ghost waited behind the next corner. There they were, Marla and Jason. She was flipping pancakes, smiling like she was filming a commercial. He was sitting at the island, bare feet on the barstool rail, scrolling through his phone. They didn't notice me at first. And when they did, it wasn't shock or guilt that crossed their faces. Just mild inconvenience. Oh, she said with a flick of her wrist, as if I were interrupting a cooking show. Didn't expect you this early. Thought you were staying with Andre. I just came to get a few things. Jason didn't even look up. You know where the door is. That line. That casual arrogance. I clenched my jaw and walked past him without another word. My fist balled so tight my fingers ached. I moved toward the stairs. Just as I reached the second floor, I heard the back door open and little feet racing in. Kira. Her voice used to light up every room I was in. Every time she said, Daddy, it felt like the sun had chosen to shine only for me. But now she looked older, colder. Or maybe it was just the shift in how she looked at me. She dropped her backpack on the floor, chewing the end of a juice straw, and saw me halfway up the stairs. Oh, hi, she said. Not Daddy. Not even hey. Just, hi. Like I was the neighbor she only sometimes saw watering the lawn. I stepped down slowly. Hey, sweetheart. I was just grabbing some stuff from my office. She shrugged. Mom said you're leaving. There it was. The new narrative. Simple. Efficient. Cruel. I didn't exactly leave, I said gently. Things are complicated right now. She shrugged again. Jason's cooler anyway. He taught me how to make protein shakes. And he said I can ride in his truck. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I even say to that? That she shouldn't trust this guy? That I was still her father even if I wasn't in the house? That she didn't understand yet what betrayal looked like when it came dressed in charm and six-packs? Instead, I just nodded. That's good, I managed to say, even though it nearly crushed me. Glad you're having fun. She skipped past me and ran into the kitchen. Jason, can we do abs later? Only if you finish your eggs, he called back. chuckling. I stood there at the top of the stairs for a moment, staring at the photos lining the hallway wall. Except they weren't our photos anymore. My wedding picture was gone. The family beach photo I took with the self-timer while holding Kira on my shoulders? Gone. In their place were sterile, recent shots, Marla and Jason doing yoga. Jason and Kira at a smoothie bar. Marla and Jason holding hands in what looked like our backyard. My breath caught in my chest. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being erased. I moved fast. Grabbed what I needed, passport, laptop, a few files, a hoodie she hadn't burned yet with Jason's cologne, and made for the door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. The last thing I heard was Jason laughing, asking if she wanted to go furniture shopping later. She giggled and said, "Let's make this place ours." As the front door closed behind me, I stood on the porch for a moment, looking out at the neighborhood. The same street where I taught Kira to ride her bike. The same sidewalk where Marla and I once sat during a blackout, holding candles and listening to music on my phone. All of it, rewritten, deleted. Like my existence was just a placeholder waiting for the real star to arrive. I got into my car, closed the door, let the silence wrap around me like a shield, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to feel the burn behind my eyes. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, took one deep breath. They didn't just throw me out. They tried to unmake me, like I was some temporary chapter in their story. But I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to beg for a role in their twisted rewrite. They could keep their performance. I was writing a new script now, one they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. The loft didn't smell like home, not at first. It smelled like fresh paint, industrial metal, and new beginnings. And to be honest, that first night, I hated it. Not because it was too small or too empty, but because it was quiet. Too quiet. You don't realize how much sound fills a house until it's gone, the creak of stairs, the laughter of a child, the hum of another presence in the room. This place had none of that. Just echoing steps and silence. But it was mine, untouched, uninvaded. And that made all the difference. It was on the other side of the city. Not too far, but far enough that I didn't have to risk bumping into Marla at the grocery store or seeing Jason at the gas station grinning like he'd won some prize. It was a one-bedroom with exposed brick and tall windows that let in just enough morning sun to remind you were still alive. I moved in with nothing but a suitcase, my laptop, and the anger I hadn't dared to unpack yet. The night after I left the house for good, I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't scroll through old pictures or reread our texts. I sat on the floor with my back against the cold wall and just stared at the ceiling. Hours passed. Maybe the whole night. I don't remember. But somewhere in that silence, something settled in me. A new kind of resolve. I wasn't going to sink. Not for them. Not this time. The next morning, I called Andre. Andre and I go back years. College roommates. The kind of friend who remembered your mother's name and sent flowers after her funeral. We talked about starting a business together once, back when we were too broke and too idealistic to make it real. But he'd planted a seed back then, a consulting firm that focused on turning around small businesses, especially family-owned ones, by guiding silent investors through restructuring, market analysis, and crisis cleanup. A safety net for the ones no one saw coming. He picked up on the second ring. Colin? Damn, man. It's been a minute. You good? I didn't lie. No. But I'm getting there. You still thinking about that consultancy idea? He paused for a moment, then laughed. Are you serious? Dead serious. I've got time. I've got capital. And I've got fire. That was all it took. Andre didn't need convincing. He just needed a partner. And I needed a purpose. Within the week, we were drawing up documents, registering our LLC, and finalizing the brand, recurve strategies. Because life bends. It doesn't always break. Andre handled outreach and onboarding. I took care of the financial structuring, projections, back-end analytics. It was the perfect match of minds. He was the people guy. I was the quiet storm in the background. Together, we started consulting with clients who were buried in family drama, legacy debt, and inherited businesses on the verge of collapse. In a twisted way, it was like therapy. Fixing other people's chaos while mine was still fresh in the rear view. And while all that was happening, Marla still thought I was couch hopping. I let her believe it. I said nothing when she sent that one lazy text a week later. Just checking if you're going to pick up your stuff from the garage. Jason wants to turn it into a gym. No, how are you? No, we need to talk about Kira. Just a courtesy notification that my life was now being used as storage. I read it twice, then deleted it. No reply. Instead, I wired a portion of my inheritance, an account she never knew about, set aside by my mother years ago, into our new business account. 6 figures. Quiet. Legal. Untouched. Marla had always assumed my family was broke. She used to joke about it when she thought it was funny. At least my side has some class, she'd say at dinners. I used to laugh along to keep the peace. I regret that now. With the new capital, Andre and I rented a modest office downtown, nothing flashy, but clean and respectable. Clients started coming in. A bakery in debt after a family lawsuit. A construction firm losing contracts due to an owner's divorce. A boutique hotel on the verge of foreclosure after a sibling split. Each one reminded me of what I'd survived and what I was building now. Every day, I woke up earlier. Every night, I went to bed tired in the best way. I filled my hours with strategy calls, data audits, pitch decks, and action plans. My loft, once cold and empty, began to feel different. Warmer. Not from anything physical, but from momentum. Progress. I bought a plant, then a new coffee machine, then a second chair for the desk, just in case Kira ever visited and needed to do her homework. That thought stuck with me. If she ever visited. I hadn't seen her since the morning she shrugged at me in the hallway, called Jason cool, and said almost nothing else. It haunted me more than I wanted to admit. But I knew I couldn't force her back. Not yet. Kids don't understand betrayal the way adults do. They just go where the energy is easier. And right now, Jason had all the shiny distractions, and I was just the man who walked out. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I started keeping a notebook beside my bed. Every time I remembered something she tossed out or gave away, my mug, the photo albums, the Christmas ornaments from our first tree, I wrote it down. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. Not to punish her, but to remind myself of what was being taken. Because one day, when I finally spoke, I wanted it all laid out. Not in a scream, but in truth. Precise. Documented. Undeniable. One night, I sat down with Andre after hours at the office. We were going over a client file when he leaned back and said, "You're different, man. Focused. Sharper than I've ever seen you." I smiled slightly. I've got nothing left to lose. He studied me for a moment. "No, you've got everything to gain. That's why you're dangerous now." He was right. While Marla poured wine in the kitchen of my old house and posted filtered selfies with Jason, I was laying foundation stones. While Jason strutted around in my hoodie and talked about his dream of opening a supplement bar, I was watching market trends and tracking failing chains I could buy out by spring. While they thought I was licking my wounds, I was getting stronger. Smarter. I didn't post about it. I didn't share motivational quotes. I didn't look for pity or applause. I just moved quietly. Because silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. The first time I sat across from Gwen Morales, I wasn't sure what to expect. She didn't dress like the typical lawyer in expensive suits or stiff collars. No flashy jewelry, no oversized briefcase. She wore dark denim, a charcoal blazer, and red lipstick that didn't smudge when she sipped her coffee. But when she looked at me, really looked at me, I saw it. That gleam. That sharpness behind her calm. Gwen wasn't in the business of playing fair. She played to win. She didn't ask me to vent or talk about my feelings. She asked for receipts. I gave her everything. The house deed. Bank records. Statements showing the lease of a new gym under my name, despite me never signing anything. Screenshots of purchases Jason made with our joint card after he moved in. Marla had been so busy celebrating her freedom she forgot to do her homework. But I hadn't. I'd been collecting proof like firewood, quietly stacking it all until the moment it would burn. When Gwen finished reading, she sat back and tapped her pen against her legal pad. "They think you're stupid," she said plainly. "That's good. We'll let them keep thinking that." I wasn't the kind of man who liked drama, but this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about precision, dignity, justice. I didn't want to destroy Marla. I wanted her to feel the weight of every choice she made while laughing in my face. Not in a public spectacle. In court, where truth has teeth. Gwen smiled without showing any. "You'll file first. That alone gives you the tone. And we're not filing for a reconcilable diff. You'll request primary custody with shared visitation based on environmental instability. I'll handle the rest." I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to control. When the papers were ready, I didn't deliver them myself. Gwen had them sent through a professional courier, one of those guys in a gray suit who doesn't blink. He served Marla during brunch with her friends at that overpriced cafe she always pretended to hate but never missed a reservation for. Jason was with her, wearing another hoodie that used to be mine, probably thinking it made him look relatable. I heard from a mutual friend, one of the few who hadn't picked a side, that she choked on her mimosa when she read the words, "Petitioner, Colin Reyes." She thought I'd go quietly. I didn't. What made it better was that Gwen had filed a formal injunction on assets the same day. Meaning the accounts? Frozen. The car she used that was still under my name? Restricted. The gym lease Jason signed without legal ownership? Flagged and voided. It was a slow bleed. Nothing flashy. Just one legal paper cut after another until they started to realize the blood was theirs. A week later, I got a text from Marla. Marla, really? Colin? You're being petty now. No hello. No, can we talk? Just a guilt trip wrapped in entitlement. I didn't answer. 2 days later came another message. Marla, Jason says we can fight this. He's got a friend who's a lawyer. I smiled when I read that. A friend. Of course. This wasn't chess to them, it was poker. Bluffing and bravado. They didn't realize I had already flipped the board. Gwen dug deeper. Turns out Jason's gym empire was built on false tax IDs and vendor kickbacks. He'd used my name to apply for a business grant through a loophole, counting Marla as his co-signer. We had emails, screenshots, timestamped delivery orders, all pointing to financial fraud committed while we were still married. Gwen called it a goldmine of stupidity. I called it leverage. The moment we submitted everything to the court, Jason was served with a separate lawsuit. I didn't even have to be there. Gwen handled it all. A cease and desist, a civil claim for damages, and a request for a restraining order pending the hearing. Jason didn't laugh this time. From what I heard, he stormed out of their house that night, punched a hole in the drywall, and blamed Marla for dragging him into it. She called again. I let it ring. Then came the email. Subject: this isn't what I wanted. Body: we were supposed to split peacefully. You're making this ugly. I didn't mean for things to go like this. Funny how people suddenly want peace after they've lit the fire and watched you burn. I saved the email, printed it, and handed it to Gwen. She stapled it into the binder, just another piece of the narrative. In court prep, I stayed silent. Gwen spoke for me. Calm, articulate, methodical. She laid everything out before the judge. Financial manipulation, emotional instability, proof of cohabitation prior to separation, and Jason's fraud. When Marla's lawyer tried to paint her as a mother, trying her best to find happiness, Gwen flipped it. She found happiness at the expense of her husband's dignity and her daughter's stability. That shut them up. But the real dagger came when Gwen requested access to the home security footage I'd secretly backed up to the cloud. They didn't know I still had access. Marla never changed the password. In one clip, Jason walked into the kitchen, muttering, "This house is a mess. How did he live like this?" Marla laughed. "Don't worry. I'm scrubbing every inch of his energy out." Another clip showed Jason packing boxes from my office while mocking my books. "This guy reads leadership manuals?" he snorted. No wonder she got bored. We didn't show it to embarrass them. We showed it to reveal intent. Disrespect. Willful replacement. All while I was still legally her husband. The judge leaned back in her chair, brow furrowed. Then she spoke. "I've seen a lot of cases, but rarely do I see someone so systematically erased from their own life. Mr. Reyes, your restraint is commendable. That one sentence did more for my healing than months of therapy ever could." Marla didn't speak that day. Her hands shook. Jason didn't even show up. Gwen looked at me as we exited the courtroom. "You're winning, Colin. Just keep your hands clean." I did. No social media rants. No cryptic quotes. No retaliatory behavior. I went back to work. I went home to my loft. I watered my plant. I read with focus. I trained at the gym twice a week. I called my accountant. I documented everything. Marla kept trying. She posted inspirational quotes online. Sometimes, we must lose the fake to find the real. She captioned a photo of herself alone at a wine bar. She tried to reframe herself as the victim, a woman healing from toxicity. But the problem with pretending to be innocent is that eventually, reality demands receipts. And I had them. They thought I would fall apart. But I wasn't broken. I was becoming bulletproof. The first crack showed in Jason's voice when his card declined at the smoothie bar. I wasn't there, of course, but I didn't need to be. Word got around. A mutual friend who still worked at Marla's favorite spa saw the whole thing unfold. Jason tried to swipe 3 times. Each time, the same response: declined. The fourth attempt was met with a quiet stare from the cashier and a sympathetic, "Maybe try another one, sir." Jason laughed it off, but the blush on his neck told the truth. That was the first crack. The second came 2 days later when he was served a court summons, right in the parking lot of his so-called gym. I watched the footage later, forwarded by my PI. Jason had just stepped out of his truck, wearing one of those tank tops that hugged his biceps like he was starring in a low-budget action movie. The moment he opened the door, a man in a gray suit approached, handed him a sealed envelope, and walked away without a word. Jason stood there, confused, flipping the envelope over like it might bite him. He opened it right there on the hood of his truck. Then the third crack. Panic. It hit fast. Phone calls from Marla. Then from a number I didn't recognize, probably Jason's burner or his lawyer friend. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't interested in their scrambling. I was interested in watching them run out of room. You see, Jason made the mistake of treating my name like it was a prop. On paper, he used me. On forms, on leases, on vendor orders. He'd assumed I was the type who didn't check his credit statements or follow up on digital signatures. But I had copies of everything. Gwen helped me track every transaction he made using my joint accounts with Marla or my identity. It wasn't just careless, it was criminal. The gym? Turns out Jason had never legally registered it in his name. The lease was signed under a proxy company Marla opened while we were still married, which gave me partial ownership. We froze the assets, froze the inventory, froze the supplier accounts. Jason tried to fight it, filed a motion claiming hardship, but Gwen handled that with ease. "Let them sweat," she said coolly, sliding the documents back into her leather folder. "You're not here to destroy them. You're here to let them destroy themselves." Meanwhile, I'd made a quiet investment, something close to poetic. A local wellness center downtown, run by a husband and wife team who had nearly gone under after a bad partnership. Marla once mocked the place when I suggested we try their couple's yoga class. "Wellness centers are for people with nothing better to do," she'd laughed. "I'll stick to real results." She meant Jason, of course. Her real results. Muscles over mindfulness. Volume over substance. I met with the couple twice, ran through their books, and saw what they really needed wasn't money, it was structure. Marketing. A digital revamp. Within 6 weeks of investment and back-end management, their bookings tripled. We rebranded them, boosted local partnerships, and launched a subscription program. What was once a failing storefront had now become a thriving holistic hub. I became a silent partner, very silent. No names on the walls. No photos on the site. Just quiet percentages hitting my account while Jason's gym bled out in broad daylight. That same week, Marla posted something that made me pause. When the people you trust hurt you the most, you build your own peace. She included a photo of her alone in the kitchen, holding a mug, probably one she bought to replace the one Kira made me. She looked tired. No filters could hide that. No amount of online wisdom quotes could mask the fact that their little kingdom was beginning to collapse. Then came the email from Jason. Subject: about the business. Body: look, I didn't mean for things to go this way. I thought we were just using your name temporarily until things got stable. I didn't know there'd be legal issues. I'm willing to negotiate a settlement if it helps everyone move on. I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of anger, but disbelief. He was asking me for help. This was the same guy who moved into my house while I still legally lived there. The same guy who wore my clothes, drank my whiskey, erased my name from my own daughter's routine. Now he wanted to negotiate? I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Gwen. She responded with a 3-word email, adding to discovery. The next few weeks unfolded like slow, satisfying chess. Jason lost 2 major vendor accounts, suppliers Gwen had flagged for potential fraud. Without those contracts, his gym couldn't order equipment. Then came the rent delinquency notice. Marla hadn't paid in months. They blamed each other. Jason thought Marla was covering it with her Instagram sponsor money. Marla assumed Jason was using his new meal plan coaching income. But neither had the funds, and the joint account they used had already been frozen. They were unraveling. And I was growing. Recurve Strategies had picked up 4 new clients that month. One of them, ironically, was a startup trying to recover from a toxic brand partnership with a fitness influencer who bailed after taking a massive upfront payment. The CEO handed me the file and said, "We need to rebuild without ego. We need professionals." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, not out of celebration, but reflection. I stood by my loft window and looked out at the city lights. There was a time when I thought my identity was tied to being a husband, a provider, a man who kept the peace no matter what. But now I was something else. Not bitter, not broken, just rebuilt. Later that week, I got a call I didn't expect. From Kira. Her voice was small on the line. Dad? I swallowed hard. Hey, baby. You okay? There was a pause. Can I come stay with you this weekend? My heart almost gave out. Of course. Always. She whispered, Jason said I can't talk to you without Mom's permission. But I miss you. That was it. The final crack. Jason could mess with my finances, my name, my house, but the moment he tried to gatekeep my daughter, that was war. I didn't scream. I didn't show up banging on doors. I called Gwen. That night, we filed for emergency custodial review. The court hearing was set in motion. And this time, I wasn't just bringing proof. I was bringing fire. It was a Thursday evening when Kira showed up at my door, standing beneath the flickering hallway light like a ghost from a better time. I opened the door, half expecting it to be a delivery or a neighbor needing help with something, but there she was, small, unsure, clutching her purple backpack against her chest like it was the only thing anchoring her. Hey, she whispered. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. I was so used to seeing her from a distance or through Marla's filtered social media posts that I'd almost convinced myself she wasn't real anymore. But here she was, skin flushed from the cold, eyes wide, scared, and still mine. Hey, sweetheart, I finally said, stepping aside. Come in. She didn't say much as she walked in. She moved slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. I watched her scan the room, bare walls, a small gray couch, books stacked neatly on the shelf, her old sketch pad sitting on the side table where I'd kept it in case she ever came over. Her eyes landed on it, and I saw the first flicker of something familiar. You kept this? She asked, picking it up. Of course, I said. You made that cover yourself. Remember? She nodded slowly, flipping through the pages. She paused on a picture she'd drawn of us at the beach, her little hand in mine, the waves in the background. Her fingers lingered on the paper for a long time. Mom said you left, she said suddenly, still looking down. That you didn't want us anymore. The weight of her words hit me like a truck. I sat down beside her, careful not to crowd her. I never left you, Kira, I said quietly. Things between your mom and me got complicated. But I've always wanted you. Always. She didn't look at me. She just sat there, flipping pages again, her little brow furrowed in that way she always did when something didn't make sense. I heard them arguing, she said after a while. Jason and Mom. A lot. He said you were too soft. That's why she needed a real man. My stomach twisted. Hearing it from her lips was worse than reading it in legal filings or hearing it from friends. I'm sorry you had to hear that, I said gently. None of that is true. Being kind doesn't make someone weak. And being loud doesn't make someone strong. She looked up at me then, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw my daughter, the fire in her, the doubt, the searching. He threw your picture away, she said quietly. The one by my bed. I nodded slowly, swallowing the anger building in my throat. That's okay, I said. It's just a picture. No, she said, her voice trembling. I dug it out of the trash. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not just between her and Jason, but between us. She had seen enough. She had started to put the pieces together herself. I made her grilled cheese that night, her favorite. We watched that cartoon she used to love, the one with the talking frog and the overly dramatic owl. She didn't laugh much, but she leaned against me by the second episode, her head on my shoulder like nothing had changed. After she fell asleep on the couch, I carried her to the bed I'd been preparing for months. I had never been sure she'd actually sleep in it, but I made it anyway, pillows fluffed, nightlight glowing softly, a small journal on the table with a glitter pen, just in case. That night, I stood at the door for a long time, watching her sleep, wondering how much she had really seen. How much of the yelling, the cold silences, the fake smiles she'd soaked up without understanding, and how much of that she now carried inside her. The next morning, I called Gwen. She asked to stay with me, I said. Not just for a night. She doesn't feel safe over there. She's scared. There was a pause on the line. Gwen never rushed when it mattered. Then, we filed for emergency custodial review. Immediately. The legal process wasn't fast, but we didn't need fast, we needed solid. Gwen had everything lined up. The footage of Jason mocking me. The bank statements. The evidence of unauthorized purchases. But now we had something stronger. A voice that mattered. A child's voice. Kira started visiting more often after that night. Weekends became longer. School drop-offs became easier. She asked questions, now hard ones. Why did you and Mom stop loving each other? I took a deep breath before answering. I never stopped loving her, I said. But love isn't always enough if the other person doesn't respect it. And sometimes people change. They make choices. And those choices come with consequences. She nodded, quiet, thoughtful. Do you still love her? I paused. I'll always care about her, I said honestly. But the person she's become, that's not the person I build a life with. She didn't press me further. I think she just wanted to know I wasn't bitter. That I hadn't turned into the monster Jason made me out to be. Kids can feel that. You know, the quiet bitterness adults carry when they think no one's watching. I never wanted to carry that around her. Then one afternoon, she came to me with her arms crossed, nervous. Jason told Mom I was spying for you. My chest tightened. What did she say? She told him to calm down. But then she started crying. And then Jason yelled. He slammed the door and left. I nodded, trying to stay calm. And how did that make you feel? She looked up at me, serious and small. Like home isn't home anymore. I didn't speak. I just pulled her into a hug and let her stay there. That night, Gwen finalized the emergency filing. We had written statements from two of Marla's neighbors who overheard the fights. A report from a child psychologist who met with Kira and confirmed the stress she'd been absorbing. We even had audio Kira had recorded accidentally on her tablet, a moment where Jason shouted at Marla, calling Kira spoiled and soft like her dad. When I heard that, I had to leave the room. I couldn't hear my daughter's voice flinch like that and stay composed. We submitted everything. Marla didn't respond right away. But 3 days later, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were puffy. Her makeup was barely there. Jason was nowhere in sight. We need to talk, she said, arms folded, voice low. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not in front of her. She nodded slowly, then looked up at me with something that almost looked like regret. I don't know what's happening to my life. I didn't answer. She wasn't looking for comfort. Just a soft landing. You're going for full custody? I'm going for what's best for Kira. She looked down, rubbed her hands together. Jason's not who I thought he was. I know. She looked up again, searching my face. Do you hate me? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then said, no. But I don't trust you. She flinched, like that hurt more than anything else I could have said. And maybe it did. I turned to go back inside, and before I closed the door, I looked back once. She's safe here. That's what matters now. And I'm in every word. There's a specific kind of silence that fills a courtroom before the judge walks in. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that presses on your chest, makes your heartbeat feel louder, and stretches every second until it starts to feel like time's punishing you for something you haven't even done. I sat at the polished wooden table, my palms flat on the surface, eyes forward. Gwen sat beside me, calm, organized, flipping through a thick folder of evidence like she'd memorized every page. She had. Marla was across the aisle, sitting stiffly in a cream blouse that looked like it had been ironed by someone else. She didn't look at me, not once. Her hair was pulled back tight, her eyes puffy, lips bare. The way she kept tugging at the edge of her sleeve told me all I needed to know. She wasn't in control anymore. And she knew it. Jason wasn't with her. He never showed. When the bailiff called the session to order and the judge walked in, I stood automatically, like I'd rehearsed it. We all did. And for a moment, I wasn't a man in a courtroom. I was just a father. A man who hadn't yelled. A man who hadn't fought in the street or posted rants online. I had walked away, yes, but I had walked forward. And now, here I was, ready to speak with the truth, not noise. The judge, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and no patience for theatrics, flipped through her file. We're. The court has reviewed the emergency motion and accompanying documentation. Counsel, you may proceed. Gwen stood. No grand introduction. No fake charm. Just facts. Your Honor, we are requesting primary custody based on a consistent and documented pattern of emotional instability in the child's current residence, including exposure to frequent verbal altercations between the mother and her partner, unauthorized usage of marital finances prior to the divorce proceedings, and the child's own stated preference, recorded through a court-appointed counselor, to reside with her father in a more stable environment. The judge nodded. I've read the initial findings. Marla's lawyer, some slick, overconfident guy in a shiny blue suit who looked like he'd rather be on television than in court, stood next. Your Honor, the mother has provided a safe, loving environment. The emotional distress noted in the motion is a result of the father manipulating the child against her mother. This is a classic case of parental alienation. That word, alienation. I clenched my teeth. For a moment, I imagined what it would feel like to stand up and throw every document on that table across the room. But instead, I breathed. Gwen stepped forward again. Your Honor, we have video evidence of the child's tablet capturing audio of Jason, Mr. Reyes' former friend, and the mother's current partner, yelling at both Marla and the child. He refers to the child as spoiled and compares her unfavorably to her father. We also have testimony from neighbors regarding raised voices and verbal abuse. Additionally, there's this. She pulled out the picture. Kira's drawing. It was a child's drawing. Uneven lines, messy crayons. But the story it told broke something deep. Two stick figures stood under a sun, one labeled Dad, the other me. A third figure was scribbled out in black crayon, with angry lines drawn across its face. Above the picture, in crooked writing, I feel safe here. The judge studied it for a long moment, then asked, has the child spoken with a counselor? She has, Gwen said. 3 sessions. The report was submitted this morning. The judge flipped through it, slowly, then looked back at Marla. Do you wish to respond? Marla stood. For a second, I thought maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd finally show some hint of the woman I used to know. The one who laughed at bad movies, who held my hand in the hospital when Kira was born, who used to talk about building a family legacy. But instead, she cleared her throat and said, I didn't know Jason was saying those things to her. I didn't know she felt that way. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she looked almost human. Almost. The judge wasn't moved. Mrs. Reyes, the fact that you didn't know doesn't absolve you. It concerns the court that your daughter's emotional safety went unnoticed. This is not about punishing either of you. It's about protecting her. Then the judge turned to me. Mr. Reyes, would you like to make a statement? I stood, my legs stiff, my voice steady despite the war in my chest. Your Honor, I didn't come here to win. I came here to make sure my daughter feels safe, that she's heard. I never told her to choose. I never told her to hate her mother. But she came to me. She told me how she felt. I listened. That's what this is about. The judge looked at both of us. Thank you. I'm ready to make a ruling. No recess. No delays. Just that. I am awarding primary physical custody to Mr. Reyes with shared legal custody. Mrs. Reyes will have structured visitation, supervised for the first 90 days, and reviewed thereafter. All financial control related to the child's care will be transferred to Mr. Reyes immediately. This decision is based on the clear evidence presented and the child's well-being. Marla gasped like she had been slapped. I heard a quiet sob escape her lips. But it wasn't out of injustice. It was out of consequence. The judge banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. I turned to Gwen, who smiled for the first time since this all began. You did it, she said. No, I replied. She did it. Kira gave me the strength. Outside the courtroom, Marla sat on a bench, hunched forward, clutching her purse like it might keep her from falling apart. I didn't stop. I didn't gloat. I walked past her without a word. But Jason, he was waiting outside the building, leaning against a rental car. When he saw Marla come out with red eyes, he straightened up, clearly expecting a meltdown. Instead, she walked right past him. Marla, he called. We'll fix this, right? She didn't answer. She kept walking. He followed for a few steps. Marla, you told me. Then she spun around. You lied about everything, she snapped. You used his name, his money. You ruined everything I had left. Oh, so now it's my fault? Jason barked. You're the one who said he was weak. Marla slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed across the courthouse steps. He stood there, stunned. And then she said the words I'd never forget. You were a distraction. He was a foundation. She walked off. And just like that, Jason was left standing there, jaw clenched, face burning with the sting of reality. I watched it all from the side. Did it feel like revenge? No. It felt like release. Back at home, Kira waited on the couch, flipping through a book. When I walked in, she looked up with big, hopeful eyes. So, she asked. I smiled. You're home for good now. She jumped into my arms and held me so tight I thought I might break. But I didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt whole again. The day the house sold was the first time in a long while I slept in. Not because I was tired. I wasn't. It was more like my body had finally exhaled after months of holding tension in every muscle, every thought. I didn't set an alarm. I didn't check my phone first thing. I just lay there, listening to the soft rustling of the trees outside the window of my loft, the subtle hum of the city just beginning to stir. It was calm. Real calm. The kind that doesn't come from silence, but from peace. The realtor called around 11. "It's official," she said brightly. "Signed, sealed, wired. You'll see the funds in your account today." I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the ceiling. That house, it was more than wood and walls. It had held every version of me: new husband, nervous father, quiet provider, unseen partner. And now, it was gone. But not to Marla. Not to Jason. It was going to a young couple expecting their first child, eager to start their own chapter. I had made sure of that. I sat up, brewed my coffee, and checked the last few transfers on my banking app. The joint account? Closed. The shared utilities? Terminated. The car under Marla's name? Still co-leased with mine? Repossessed 2 days ago, she'd ignored 3 notices. I had given her chances. Quiet ones. But she never took them. She thought the silence meant I was weak. But silence, I've learned, is the loudest form of strategy. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring the first time. Then again. Third time, I picked up, already knowing. "Hello." A pause. Then a familiar, cracking voice. "Colin." "Marla." For a second, the air felt heavier, like a memory was trying to squeeze its way into the room. But I stayed still, cold coffee in my hand. I staring straight ahead. I just found out," she said. "The house, you sold it?" "Yes. You didn't even tell me. You don't live there anymore." Her voice trembled. "That was Kira's childhood home." "No," I said calmly. "That was her childhood home. But it stopped being her safe place the day you invited someone else in while I was still her father under that roof." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "I never wanted this to happen like this. You wanted control. You got consequences instead." She sniffled. "I lost everything." "No," I said quietly. "You gave everything away." Another silence. Then, Jason left. I didn't respond. He packed up last week, took the last of his supplements and walked out. No call. No warning. Just gone. I almost smiled. Sounds familiar. That stung. I could hear it in the way her voice tightened when she said, "I didn't cheat, Colin. Not in the way people think. We were already broken." "You didn't cheat," I said, keeping my voice even. "You just moved someone into our bed while I was still legally your husband. That's not cheating. That's erasing. And I watched you do it without even blinking. I was lonely. I was too. Difference is, I stayed loyal." She didn't argue. For the first time, she didn't try to spin it. Didn't throw words at me like weapons. She just broke. "You were right," she whispered. "He used me. Took what he could. When the money dried up, so did he." I said nothing. And Kira won't answer my texts. She's angry. She's hurt. She said I made her feel small. That she didn't matter. She mattered to me every single day. That's the difference. She sobbed then. I could hear her trying to muffle it, but the truth leaked through her cracks like water through a damaged dam. I didn't rush her. I didn't hang up. I just listened. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. Really thought about it. "No, I don't hate you, but I'm done trying to understand you." Silence again. "I want to fix things," she said. "I want to see her. Please, just tell her that I love her." "I will," I said. But love without accountability means nothing to her now. Or to me. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone for a long time afterward, letting the weight of that call settle. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. The slow, heavy kind that doesn't come with fanfare, just a deep, hollow exhale of something you'd carried for too long. That evening, I made spaghetti for dinner, Kira's favorite. She was sitting on the floor of the loft with her sketchbook, headphones in, humming softly to herself. She looked up and smiled when she saw the pot. "Extra cheese?" she asked. "Always," I said. We ate together on the couch, plates on our laps, watching some animated movie about time travel. At one point, she turned to me and asked, "Why do people say sorry when they don't change?" It hit me harder than I expected. I set my plate down, wiped my hands on a napkin, and leaned forward. "Because saying sorry is easier than becoming different," I said. "But real change? That's not words. That's consistency. Time. Proof." She nodded slowly, like that made sense. "Is Mom sorry?" "I think she is," I said truthfully. "But I don't know if she's ready to change." She didn't say anything else. Later that night, as I tucked her into bed, she pulled the covers up to her chin and whispered, "I feel calm here." That one sentence undid me. I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and sat in the hallway outside her door for a while. Not because she needed me, but because I needed to soak in that peace. That feeling that, after everything, after being erased and replaced and humiliated, I had created a place that felt safe. The next day, Gwen called. "Did you see his new address?" she asked. "Who?" "Jason. My investigator tracked him. He's in Reno, working at a 24-hour gas station." I blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope." Apparently he and another ex-business partner had a falling out. Word is, he tried to get a loan from some gym investor who Googled his name. Guess what popped up? I hope it was the lawsuit. Front and center. I chuckled. Not out of revenge. Not because it made me happy. Just because it was fitting. I didn't have to ruin him. He built his own downfall with every arrogant swipe of my card, every protein shake pitch he tried to sell off my name. Marla's Instagram? Gone. Her wellness journey blog? Deleted. Her empowerment coach title? Disappeared like smoke. What was left now was just silence. The same kind she used to fill with her voice. The same silence she mistook for weakness. But not me. I lived in it. I thrived in it. And in that silence, I rebuilt a world where my daughter felt safe, where I could wake up with peace in my chest instead of rage in my throat. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was the seed. Success has a strange silence to it, at least the kind I was building. It didn't come with champagne toasts or viral announcements. There were no selfies with dollar signs or flashy reels with motivational quotes. It came quietly, like the first snow at midnight. You only notice it when you step outside and realize the world around you has changed. It had been a year since I'd walked out of the house that used to be mine, 12 months since I let Marla and Jason believe I was finished. But here I was now, sitting in the corner office of Recurve Strategies, sipping coffee out of a ceramic mug that said, "Be the Storm," watching my name, or at least the code name I used for ownership, run across client contracts totaling more in a month than I used to earn in a year. Andre sat across from me, scrolling through a list of new client pitches. "We're on track to break 8 figures this quarter," he said casually, like we were talking about lunch. I nodded, but my mind wasn't on the numbers. Not fully. I had never wanted wealth for the sake of wealth. I wanted freedom. I wanted stability for Kira. I wanted quiet power, the kind people never see coming because they're too busy laughing at your shoes or your silence. And now I had it. All of it. Without selling my soul. Without losing my integrity. I kept my name off everything public. No LinkedIn posts. No flashy bios. Just private contracts, silent partnerships, and an ironclad ownership trail that could be traced only by someone who truly knew where to look. Marla didn't. Jason couldn't. And the people who tried to replace me? They were still busy cleaning up their own mess. The irony of it all hit me when a potential client reached out, a media company trying to rebuild after a massive PR fallout. Their CEO? One of Jason's old gym sponsors. Apparently, he'd pitched an online fitness empire and ghosted after a failed product launch. The CEO described him as charming, but messy. I simply nodded and said we'd be happy to help clean things up. I never mentioned our connection. Why would I? The beauty of rising in silence is that you don't have to shout when the world finally turns to listen. That same week, Gwen reached out. Not with legal drama. Just an update. She'd moved firms, partnered with a high-end litigation group in New York. She called me one of her most strategic cases. Said it still gives her chills, how calm I stayed through it all. You didn't just win, she told me over coffee. You evolved. You disappeared from their script and wrote a new one they weren't invited to. She was right. Marla tried, for a while, to reinvent herself after the collapse. I saw it through mutual acquaintances, whispers and social circles she used to rule. She launched a brief podcast on starting over, but it flopped after 3 episodes. She rebranded as a life coach, but someone, maybe Gwen, maybe Karma, sent a quiet cease and desist for using my name in her materials. It disappeared soon after. She had underestimated me so deeply, so profoundly, that when she finally tried to stand on her own, there was nothing under her feet. Because she'd never built anything real. Not alone. She'd been carried. And when the carrier stepped away, she stumbled like a shadow without a light source. Kira saw it too. She was older now, wiser in ways no kid should have to be. But she handled it with grace. I made sure her connection with her mom was never poisoned. I never spoke badly about Marla. I just let Kira observe the difference between love and performance. She tries, she told me once, after coming back from a weekend visit. But it's like she's acting, you know? I nodded. Maybe she's still figuring herself out. She should have done that before she tried to be everyone else's everything. I smiled. You're smarter than I was at your age. She beamed, proud of herself. I get that from you. That night, after she went to bed, I walked out to the balcony of our new townhouse. Not a mansion, not some flashy statement, but a solid, warm, beautifully lit space we'd made ours. 2 bedrooms, wooden floors, a backyard garden Kira had already filled with herbs and tomatoes. A life, real and growing. I stared at the stars, remembering how small I used to feel. How invisible. I remembered Marla's smirk as she introduced Jason to her friends. I remembered Jason in my hoodie, drinking my scotch, feeding my dog scraps while I stood there like a stranger in my own story. And now? Jason was working at a gas station in Reno, last I checked. He tried to start another online venture, something about protein kits and ebooks, but it had barely lifted off the ground. His Instagram was private. His LinkedIn hadn't been updated in months. The glow was gone. Marla? She'd moved into a smaller apartment outside town. Sold most of her designer things. Her last email to me months ago had just 3 lines. I'm sorry. I was wrong about you. Thank you for protecting Kira even when I didn't. I hadn't replied. I didn't need to. Because the thing about apologies is they're only useful when they're tied to change. And I didn't need her to change anymore. I just needed her to stay gone from the parts of my life she tried to erase. The next morning, I walked Kira to school. She held my hand the whole way, even though she was technically old enough to walk by herself now. She said she liked our mornings, that she liked our talks, that she felt more like herself when she was with me. At the gate, just before she ran off to class, she stopped and said, "They don't believe me when I say my dad used to be a ghost." A ghost? I laughed. What do you mean? She grinned. You were quiet. People didn't notice you. But now you're like a superhero. You don't wear a cape, but everyone who thought you were gone, you kinda haunt them. I laughed harder than I had in months. A ghost? Maybe I had been, but I wasn't anymore. Now, I was something else entirely. Not loud, not cruel, just undeniable. And that was more powerful than anything I could have said or done in the beginning. Because what she didn't know, what they didn't know, was that I never needed revenge. I just needed to remember who I was before they tried to forget me. It had been 5 years. 5 long, fast, quiet, loud, broken, beautiful years since I turned the key in my car and drove away from the life I thought I had built. 5 years since Marla looked me in the eye and said, "Make room for Jason," like I was just some furniture being replaced. 5 years since Kira stood in that hallway and said, "Jason's cooler anyway," without knowing what that sentence would brand into my chest. 5 years since I chose to walk away instead of fight in a house that no longer remembered my name. And yet, here I was, still standing, still me, but not the version of me they expected to survive. Kira was 16 now, taller, sharper, quick with her wit, stubborn with her values. She had my eyes and her mother's walk, but her spirit? That was her own. She'd seen too much too young, but instead of cracking, she grew, like a tree stretching toward light it had to find on its own. We didn't talk about the past often. I didn't want her childhood to be defined by courtrooms and custody schedules. But sometimes, like tonight, she surprised me. It was my birthday, not a big one, not a milestone, just another spring evening in April, and I had planned to spend it the same way I did most nights, reading on the couch, maybe a glass of wine, maybe a walk through the garden out back if the breeze was kind. Peaceful. I opened it to find Kira standing there with a brown paper bag, a crooked smile, and a spark in her eyes. "You forgot what day it is, didn't you?" she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. Which, in a way, she did. "I didn't forget," I said. "I was just pretending to be humble." She rolled her eyes and dropped the bag on the kitchen island. Out came a box of pasta, a jar of homemade sauce, her own recipe, and a small folded piece of paper. She held it like it was fragile, even though it was thick and creased, clearly opened and refolded a dozen times. "What's that?" I asked. She hesitated, then handed it to me. It was a scrapbook page. The edges were uneven, cut by child's scissors. On one side, a photo of us at the beach, her on my shoulders, sand stuck to our knees. On the other, a list. In her handwriting, messy and slanted. Things Dad did when no one was watching. I swallowed. She stepped back, arms crossed, suddenly shy. I started it a few years ago. Just kept adding to it. I read the first few lines. Let me win at Uno and acted surprised when I did. Made my science project volcano after I fell asleep crying. Didn't say bad things about Mom, even when I was mean to him. Cooked spaghetti every time I had a bad day. Hugged me like I wasn't broken when I thought I was. Told me I was smart before anyone else did. I had to sit down. I don't know if it was the words or the way they were written. Simple, observant, true. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the fact that I never expected to be seen again. Not like this. She sat beside me and rested her head on my shoulder. You never fought dirty, she said. Even when you could have. You just kept showing up. I nodded slowly. I still on the list. Some things don't need noise. Mom still tries to talk to me sometimes, she added quietly. But I don't feel the same around her. She always talks like she's trying to prove something. You never did. That's because I had nothing to prove. I just had to be here. She leaned back, thoughtful. You know, when you left that day, I thought you were weak. I thought Jason was strong. But I was a kid. I didn't know what strength really looked like. I let out a soft laugh. Neither did I, back then. We made dinner together, her stirring, me chopping, music playing low in the background. Nothing fancy. No decorations. Just warmth. Just presence. And in that moment, I realized something. Peace doesn't come when people stop hurting you. Peace comes when you stop letting them define who you are after they do. We ate on the patio, lights strung above us, the evening air brushing through the garden she planted. It was small, but everything in it had roots. Tomatoes, rosemary, lavender, wildflowers. Chaotic, but full of life. I'd build a little bench in the corner, the kind she liked to read on during weekends. After dinner, she handed me one last gift, an envelope. Inside was a photo, not of the past, but of now. The two of us, arms around each other, laughing in the loft. She'd captioned it in black marker. You never erased anyone. You rebuilt everything. I looked up at her, unsure what to say. People think strength is loud, she said, answering the question I hadn't asked. But watching you these past 5 years, you taught me it's not. I didn't cry. But something inside me let go, like a final knot had been untied. We sat there until the stars came out, quiet, just existing in the stillness we'd earned. Later that night, after she left, I stood in the doorway for a long time. The loft was still. The kind of still that comes after a storm that tried and failed to drown you. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out the folder where I kept a few reminders of everything that happened, court papers, legal notes, old emails I never responded to. I opened it, looked at the mess of it all, and then slowly, quietly, closed it. Then I took it to the fireplace and burned it, one page at a time. Not in anger, not to forget, but because I didn't need it anymore. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't some story of a man who came back to show them what they lost. It was about knowing what I'd kept, my dignity, my presence, my daughter's love, and my ability to stand tall without shouting into the void. Marla and Jason tried to erase me. What they didn't know was that I had already started rewriting the story before they finished the first page of theirs. And this ending? It didn't need noise. It just needed peace.